Hey, Gary, welcome back to the Ecom Crew podcast.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me back. Great to be here, and greetings from Tokyo.
Hello, hello. Greetings from Las Vegas. It's good to see your face, even if it's virtually. I haven't seen you in a while, and I think you're getting close to the record for most appearances of any guest on the Ecom Crew podcast. We don't really have a lot of repeat guests, unless it's Dave Bryant, but I think this is like your fifth time being on the podcast.
I'm very honored. I hope I can continue to add great value so you guys can bring me back. But yeah, it's very honored to be back on Ecom Crew.
I love having you on because you always come with these like lists of things. So it's like 5 steps to like do this, or 7 steps to do that, or whatever it might be, or 10 things I learned from my seven-figure seller summit, or whatever it is. And I just think that they're really actionable, interesting takeaways. And again, I've known you for a while, and I think that you always provide a lot of value and talk about a lot of interesting stuff. So it's cool to have you back. Today, we're talking about something that I think will be really interesting, which is basically the opportunity that exists selling in Japan on Amazon. And you've shared some facts with me. Amazon themselves have shared lots of facts with me because they are relentless in trying to get people to, it seems like, to sign up for Amazon Japan and several other marketplaces. I always find it to be the ultimate in irony that they can pester the living crap out of us with like cold emails and unsolicited sales calls for whatever it might be, but you can't email one of your customers, or I guess technically their customers, about something that like is a legitimate problem that they're having that you could solve for them. So that's always funny to me. But maybe take a second from your point of view, how you see this opportunity in Japan selling on Amazon.
Yeah, definitely. I feel that, for ecom and for selling on Amazon, I've been selling on Amazon since 2016. A lot of people are just, number one question is, choosing the profitable product, right? But I think, as of this year, it's not just choosing the right product, but choosing the right marketplace. And Japan is Amazon's number 4 biggest marketplace. I mean, it's behind US, Germany, and UK. It's very close to UK, but I'm just surprised almost nobody's talking about selling on Amazon Japan. I think more people are talking about like UAE and like Australia, and they're like a fraction of the size of Japan. So I think one is, a lot of people are just sleeping on it. They're not even considering it. And, there's a number of challenges with Japan. But at the same time, I started selling in Japan. I don't really speak Japanese. And, I started selling a niche in the outdoor toys category. Then the US is totally saturated. But I was able to get success, selling in Japan. I mean, granted, I am physically in Japan, but I know many sellers, they don't speak Japanese. They're not in Japan, but you can do it. So I feel that, as of today, choosing the right market, it could be even more important than choosing the right product. And a lot of sellers, a lot of brands, they're bringing their existing product selling in the US or EU into Japan.
Right.
And, we're seeing that they're getting success with that. So I'd love to share more about that as well.
Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense as well, because you think about population centers in the world. I mean, I think Japan might even be bigger than the UK, right? I mean, in terms of population,
there's about 126 million people in Japan. So I think it's double the population of the UK.
Yeah, and I think Germany's like maybe 80
million. And then Amazon is like, I just moved to Japan. I'm seeing Amazon everywhere. There's like, those Amazon Prime boxes. I mean, Tokyo has same day delivery. We just moved to a new apartment. I was able to furnish like, our living room, our TV, and a lot of our kitchen, from Amazon. It's like fast delivery. And then Amazon Japan, they became the number 1 e-com site in Japan. They took over Rakuten, which was the previous leader. So, I mean, e-com penetration rate is 74% in Japan. I mean, and, it's growing. So I see, Amazon, it's like, they're making a lot of noise here.
Yeah. In Japan. So it's probably very reminiscent. You're talking about getting started in 2016. I got started very shortly before that. And, I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, it was more luck and timing than anything, because you're getting into a marketplace that was growing incredibly quickly, that was building a lot of infrastructure, that already had a bunch of eyeballs and traffic and credit cards on file, but there weren't anywhere near enough sellers and products to really satisfy that demand. And so, when you started adding products there, you were one of 2 or 3 maybe 4, maybe 5 of the same type of product at most, where now you're probably one of, at a minimum of 50, if not 500. And it's just hard to capture the same attention in that crowded of a field. And so, I think that, that there's probably a lot of synergies or similarities, I should say. There's probably synergies as well with your existing products, but similarities in terms of being there early to a platform and making a bet that it's going to continue to grow and continue to be the number one e-commerce platform in Japan. And if that is the case, it's probably a pretty good bet to make.
Yeah, yeah, and at the same time, the competition level, there's far less competition in terms of sellers in Amazon Japan. There was a study done by Statistica recently, like in the US, everyone knows there's several million sellers. There's about maybe 1.1 active sellers. But if we look down the list, Japan is actually ranked number 8 in the number of sellers, right? There's only 170,000 FBA sellers in Japan. So, I mean, there's more sellers in Italy, in France, in India, Spain, those smaller marketplaces. And at the same time, like the competition, the listings that we do see here, many of the listings in Japanese, they're like kind of roughly done, like I don't mean to discriminate, but I just learned recently about like half of the sellers in Japan are Chinese sellers. And no disrespect, but Chinese, they move very fast. Right?
Yeah.
Everyone does, they're very quick to market, but like a lot of listings are kind of crudely done. They're not very localized well. So if you do want to enter Japan, the competition level, it is weaker as well. It's not only lower, but it's weaker. I mean, Japan's ranked again number 8 in the number of Amazon sellers in the world, whereas it's the number 4 biggest marketplace. So, we do see a lot of opportunities there. And, we've seen some case studies as well. Certain US brands, they've been able to, have a lot of success selling in Japan. Like one of the case studies we had with one of our speakers, Nick Katz, he was able to help one US brand sell about $965,000 in 13 months' time since they moved into Japan. I mean, obviously your mileage may vary, but, if you do have an existing SKU in US, you can actually move the reviews over to Japan.
Oh, is that right?
You have so you can build an international listing through Seller Central. Seller Central is entirely in English. You don't have to understand Japanese. Amazon Japan Seller Central is in English. It's the same thing. And then you can move your listings through the global review system from US to Japan. So let's say you have 500 reviews in US. You can move that into Japan. You can start off day one with 500 reviews. So instantly you have the social proof. And then the Amazon Japan review threshold, like the number of reviews are a lot lower in Japan compared to US and compared to Europe. So you could be like, one of the top sellers from day one. And then that helps a lot also with your PPC costs. Like PPC costs are significantly lower in Japan as well. So, for some sellers, that's their launch strategy. I mean, all they're doing is just moving their listing with those reviews, right? I mean, obviously you still have to localize and, translations and, kind of adjust your product market fit, look at that as well. I mean, there's certain tools that you can use as well. We can talk about that as well.
And the listing does need to be translated in the Japanese as well, correct?
Of course.
Yep.
You want to translate into Japanese. I mean, don't use Google Translate. I mean, I recommend, finding someone, not just a translator, but someone that is familiar with, copywriting and ideally familiar with Amazon SEO. That way they can help you translate the listing. And also localize, beyond just the listing, also your images, if you have infographics, if you have any text, you can definitely, translate that into Japanese as well. I mean, that way you can have a local listing and also the keyword research. I mean, there's tools out there. Helium 10 supports Amazon Japan. Jungle Scout supports it as well. So you can use that. And, I have a little hack as well if you want to talk about that, because I mean, the keywords are all in Japanese, but there's a way you can translate them all into English for free.
Interesting.
If you want to talk about that.
Yeah, let's definitely get, we'll wait just a second here because I want to, just kind of talk more about the opportunity first. But, I was telling you before recording, I guess I'm kind of pessimistic about, Amazon Japan, Amazon Canada, UK. It has nothing to do with Japan, but it's more just like, is it wise to continue on this Amazon treadmill? It's more of an overarching question. because we've already seen what's happened. Or you've been again doing this since 2016. I've been at it since 2015. Where when they have a marketplace that they desperately need you as a seller, they're very kind. They do everything they can to help you expand on Amazon and help you make a bunch of money and make it seem like the Holy Grail. But once the balance starts to tip, they are very good at reversing that and making your life miserable and extracting every penny they can from you, regardless if you're making money or not. And that's where my skepticism exists. That I'm wondering, I see the opportunity from the perspective of I already have all these products. That's the hard part, like developing the brand and the products and the instruction manual and everything else that there is to it, and reiterating and making a better and better product. So it's very appealing to be like, hey, let's just take those existing products, move them over to Amazon Japan, and strike while the iron's hot. But then the other part of me is like, am I going to spend the next couple of years building up a really big Amazon Japan presence only to find myself facing similar issues with like listing hijacking or bad actors or black hat stuff or inventory problems or PPC cost elevating or all the other things that we've experienced in Amazon US? And I think that's where I'm struggling with these days in terms of just being an Amazon seller, period. It's certainly not the Amazon Japan thing. And they make it sound so easy. When Amazon calls you and does that sales pitch, they make it sound so easy. I think we'll get a better feel. I think you're way more honest and transparent about it. And we'll talk more through that because ultimately it probably is a really good opportunity for a lot of people listening. I just think to this point, unless you convince me today on the podcast, it's been something that I'm going to avoid for right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's totally a fair point. I mean, we know all the issues and headaches dealing with Amazon, the suspensions and the case studies, and I mean, like the open cases and the back and forth. I've been through that. I'm not saying like Japan's just a bed of roses, Mike. I mean, but I do feel
it is a bed of cherry blossoms, though.
It is a bed of cherry blossoms. We're actually going to have the event during the cherry blossom season. But I mean, I feel that in Japan, it's like maybe it's not 2023, maybe it's 2018 in Japan, right? In terms of the Amazon opportunity. I mean, think of if you were like the lower PPC costs. I mean, one of the studies we've done, we found the average cost per click is about 29 cents per click in Japan, which is insane, right? Yeah. So you can lower your cost significantly. I mean, Amazon, the external marketplace and how it gets tougher and tougher in the hijacking. I mean, that exists as well here in Japan, right? I mean, but I feel at the same time, the market is still growing, and, rather than going like super sub niche, you can even choose a product that, isn't that niche down. So, it's a smaller pie for sure, but, there's like maybe in the US, there's like, it's an extra large pie, but there's like 1 million sellers, so it's sliced 1 million ways, right? But in Japan, maybe it's a medium-sized pie, but there's only, 100,000 sellers, so you can get a bigger piece of the pie if you choose wisely, right? So I think ultimately, it's up to your product. So Mike, my advice to you would be to take a look at product market fit, see in Japan, how are your products selling? Is it even selling? Do Japanese people even use it? Or maybe they are using it. Maybe your competition isn't there yet. I think chances are pretty good that your competition is not there yet. There's only, there's like 8 times fewer sellers in Japan than in the US. So, it's case by case. But if I were you, I would, fire up Helium, fire up Jungle Scout, run some, just go on Amazon.co.jp. You don't have to understand Japanese to search on it. There's actually like little known fact. There's an English language toggle on Amazon.co.jp. So you can search for keywords in English and you can get the search results, and then you can see, and then you can do like a reverse async search, put that in Helium or Jungle Scout, do your methodology, and you can see the search volume, etc. But yeah, that would be my advice. You got to look at the numbers. And, yeah.
Interesting. So if somebody's out there, listening to this and they are interested in potentially exploring Amazon Japan, let's kind of just go through the steps to get started. Because like I did go through that with Amazon, and before you and I were talking about even Amazon Japan, it was kind of an interesting timing because just a few months ago, I was evaluating this, but there are some hurdles. I mean, if you want to
Yeah.
call them that, some registrations
Yeah.
and other things. And if you hit some certain thresholds, then you need to file taxes and things like that. So maybe
Yeah.
I just spend a few minutes discussing that and what amount of
Sure.
effort you think is necessary to get um,
Yeah.
you registered and do it correctly, so you're not causing yourself any long-term headaches.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to share one more fact that's a big
Sure.
advantage to selling in Japan in terms of supply chain. Because if you just look at the world map, Mike, I mean, Japan is much closer to China if you're sourcing from China than the US. So you know how long it takes from everybody knows, from China to US, right? To Japan, it could take only about 7 to 10 days shipping from Shanghai to Tokyo or Osaka, by sea, not by air. So you could significantly turn your product a lot faster. You can possibly free up more cash flow with smaller orders. There's no tariffs, um, you know, in Japan. So you can eliminate that. So your landed costs could be a lot lower in Japan, cheaper, faster shipping from China to Japan. Just wanted to share that with
So
everybody as well.
everything
Okay.
importing from China into Japan is imported at zero duty.
No, I mean tariffs. So
Tariffs.
let's
Okay.
not misunderstand. So we're talking
Okay.
about trade war, right? Trade
Got
war,
it.
right? Trade
Okay.
war. You have the additional 25% quote unquote
Okay.
Trump
Okay.
tariffs plus whatever duties, right? So you
Got
still
it.
have duties, but you don't have that 25% that we
Okay.
still have as of right now.
And are
Does
the
that make
duties
sense?
similar? It does. And are the duties similar to what you would pay in
They're
the US?
similar. Some could be lower, some could be higher. So it
Right.
depends. So
Okay.
definitely talk to an importer.
Okay.
Definitely talk to the importer.
But there's
Yeah.
no like pending trade war of like we're going to throw another 25% on like the Trump tariffs like you
No,
just
no, there's no
mentioned.
trade war. There is
Yeah.
some political stuff going on between two countries, which is beyond
Yeah.
my pay grade.
Right.
But no trade war as for our ecom community, for our
Fair enough.
understanding.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So, I mean, to get started, a couple of things that, like some myths first. I'd like to debunk some myths. You don't need to register a company in Japan or be based in Japan to sell in Japan. You can't use a foreign company. I'm using my foreign company. And secondly, you don't need to register for quote unquote VAT or GST in Japan. Okay, you don't need that. There is a consumption tax, but there's a certain threshold where for starting out, probably not going to cross that threshold for maybe a year or so. So you do not need to sign up for VAT. And, I know that's a big headache. And it was for me for selling in Europe and, with
Yeah.
all of that, etc. So obviously this is not legal tax advice. Talk to a tax
Right. Right.
professional. But for e-com
What is
sellers,
that threshold? So like when you hit that, when you need to like kind of take
the
that next step.
threshold, I have to fact check that. I believe it's in I think the mid six-figure US
That's what I
range,
remember it
but I
being.
have to
Yeah.
fact check that. I can't. I don't.
The
Again,
numbers
I don't want to give
in
that.
Japanese currency, so like it probably fluctuates. But my recollection, and again, I just went through this a few months ago, was that it was in that mid six figure range as well, like right at
Yeah,
like exactly mid.
yeah,
So I'm not sure how that's changed with currency fluctuations or whatever, but it's a pretty significant number, right? And so that was kind of the thing that was appealing to me, where it's just like, okay, if I were to do this and it was a complete flop, then I'm not having to go through all the headaches that I went through in the UK, because it's significantly higher barrier to entry. You just kind of mentioned this. I mean, it was kind of a nightmare, actually, realistic when you get down to it. And you're paying a lot of money up front before you have any idea if the products are going to respond well or not. The only real advantage that I saw to like going through all that was that it was the same language. Like they speak English there, and that was really the only advantage. And so, when I look at Amazon Japan, and this is kind of the thought process I had, was, hey, look, like if for some reason, because like nothing in business is guaranteed, that this just didn't work well. I mean, some people are going to try to sell there and it's just not going to work well. I mean, some products are going to do better than others. Some are going to find that it's the best thing that they've ever done. It ends up being bigger than their US business. But at least the upfront cost to find that answer out, I felt like was actually quite low. It was really just the
right,
cost of shipping the inventory into Japan. And
right,
when I got to that mid six figure number, let's just say it's a $500,000 in sales, which is actually pretty significant. I mean, again, if you're at that point, then you're probably happy to deal with the extra hassle. And that was kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, 100%. Right? Lower upfront costs. But yeah, let's talk about some steps to get started. Does that sound good? Like,
Perfect.
okay. So the first step. So this is for you if you're already selling in the US or EU and you're thinking about scaling your business to a new market such as Japan. The step one would be the product market fit analysis. So number one is you want to know if your product is going to have demand in Japan. So don't just like blindly ship your product to Japan without doing any research. Okay. The first thing is, there's tools again, Helium 10 supports Japan, Jungle Scout supports Japan, and you can put in, and you can go to amazon.co.jp and what we mentioned earlier, right? After you get the search results, you can do your keyword research. And then here's just like a quick hack I want to share with you guys, like how to do Amazon Japan product research without knowing any Japanese, if you're kind of like me. There's, with Google Sheets, you can do a Google Translate formula. Okay. So all you have to do is just copy and paste those Japanese keywords that you get from Helium or Jungle Scout into the Google Sheet. And then on the next column, you can do the Google Translate formula from Japanese to English. So just in seconds for free, you can get the rough translations of the keywords. So you can see which ones are kind of on point. And then you can drill down further using your, traditional keyword research methodology. So with that, you can actually get some intelligence first to kind of de-risk this, whether or not, their search volume, how much competition levels, and without knowing any Japanese. And also, another great tip is to just go on Google, go on YouTube and search for your product in Japan. So if you're selling a kitchen product in Japan, see if you can find some Japanese people actually using it.
Right.
If you can't find that, that's a good sign. So you don't have to physically come to Japan. You can, use the tools out there. Okay. So that's,
I imagine there's like
level.
some cultural differences, right? Just like any place else where like maybe they don't use spatulas or some weird, thing that whatever it might be. I assume that there's something there like that.
That's super important. I mean, cultural differences. If you look at a Japanese kitchen in Tokyo compared to like a US kitchen, I mean, it's like a miniature version, right? So you're not going to have like a huge amount of countertop space.
Right.
You probably won't have like a stand mixer and those attachments. You're not going to see that, but you'll see the rice cooker, right? Because everybody in Japan loves rice.
Yep.
So those types of, accessories could be a thing. Another thing is patio furniture. I mean, there's in Japan, my patio is like my tiny little balcony, and then rather than a garden, I have like a little box garden, right? So patio furniture, there's not going to be any room for that in a Tokyo apartment. So go on Google, go on YouTube, you can kind of see. I mean, they actually have walkthroughs of people showing you their apartment, right, or their whatever you're doing, maybe sports, etc. You can do this type of research as well. Okay, so that's step one on a high level product market fit analysis. All right. After that, step number two is very important, is to check the Japan product regulations, because in Japan, in order to legally import, you can't import with a foreign LLC as the importer of record. So the key is you need an importer of record with the physical Japan address. So that could be a company, like an importer of record, like agency that you use, or it could be an individual in Japan. So my recommendation is to talk to an importer of record in Japan, and then they can act as the importer. The reason is the Japanese government, in case of any liability issues, they want to be able to track this, corporation or entity down. So that's why they have this law. So you have to have a Japanese importer of record to legally import into Japan.
Gotcha. You mentioned regulations. I mean, are there other regulations similar to the US with like FDA as a for instance? I mean, we have some products that are FDA registered. We have some kids products that have to have like lead or metal certifications and other things. Are there other things like that to be aware of in Japan as well?
Yeah, there are. The regulations are a little different in Japan. And this is actually the second very important step, is to check your product regulations. My recommendation is talk to an experienced Japanese importer of record, ideally one that is in Japan, like a Japanese company. I mean, there are some like multinational IORs out there.
Right.
They may or may not be that experienced with Japan. I'm not sure, but talk to a local one. And then there's 4 key categories that tend to get more scrutinized by the Japanese regulators. So these 4 are, number 1 is supplements. Number 2 is cosmetics. Number 3 are medical devices. And number 4 are any plastic products that touch any food or drink. So for example, if you're selling like a plastic water bottle, right, in Japan, you would need to get compliance testing, right? And the testing could be it's a little different in Japan because you have to test all of the different components as well. So if you have a water bottle, you have to not only test the bottle but also the lid, the handle, like if there's anything inside it, like everything that it touches it. So
Makes
that's
sense.
the next step.
I mean, it's pretty similar to the United States, really. I mean, three of those four things, at least, are also things that are much more difficult to bring into the U.S. and sell in the U.S. without needing some type of compliance. So I think there's
Yeah,
probably a lot of similarities between the two countries.
yeah, and in terms of the compliance testing and the laws and regulations, one of the products that I was selling in the US is a kitchen product, and it's in the coffee niche. And then I looked in Japan, and there was nobody selling it. And I was like, wow, this is going to be a huge opportunity. There's no competition, right? So before I jumped in, I talked to the importer, and then later I found out the reason that nobody's selling it is, to use this product, there's like an accessory that you need to use, and that accessory is illegal in Japan. So that's why you can't, unless you have like a professional, like, cafe or a restaurant. Like you can,
Okay,
this is not for home use in Japan. So
interesting.
luckily I talked to the importer before I shipped that into Japan. Otherwise it would have been like stuck in customs or
Hmm.
Amazon warehouse and all those fees, etc. Right. So that's step number three. I mean, be aware of like all of this compliance, the regulations before you send it in. I mean, definitely talk to an importer. And then one common mistake that I see a lot of sellers make is they think even if, someone else is selling it in Japan, so it must be okay, right? No, even if someone else is selling the exact same product in Japan, it doesn't matter. You have to get the license to import it. You have to have it. Um, so you need to have your own product tested. And then in Japan, the lab testing requirement is a little different. It's not just like any lab test. There's like certain Japanese government approved labs that you have to use. So it has to be like some laboratory, in Japan or, by this XYZ, like SGS, like Tokyo or SGS Hong Kong. You can't do SGS Shenzhen. It has to be their government approved laboratory.
Okay.
So I would kind of diving into like the weeds a little bit, but I mean, the key takeaway is, be aware of your compliance, like the testing and also the costs as well.
Got it. So, I mean, I guess the overall moral of the story, to sum it up in like just a few words, is find a good importer of record before you get started, and ask them
Yeah.
all the questions before moving forward. And it sounds like you need to have an importer of record anyway, since there has to
Yes.
be a illegal Japan entity there, and so you're going to need to contact them anyway, and then they can help you with all the next steps and keep you from hitting any landmines.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Should we move on to the
Yeah.
next step?
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. Step four is if you have brand registry, you can transfer your brand registry to Japan. So the advantage of that is this can help you protect your Amazon, your brand in Japan, especially against hijackers, malicious attacks. And then oftentimes we see there's drop shippers that are selling your product in Japan already without your permission for like 3x the price. And then this way, if you have brand registry, you can have those taken down without making any test buys. So that will save you some time and some headaches. So brand registry is transferable to Japan. So, and then it also unlocks brand analytics, search frequency, all of those other tools that you can use to get additional, keyword research and intelligence. All right. Okay. So after that, step five is to get your translations done. So to sell in Japan, you need to have your listings translated into Japanese. And we covered this a little bit earlier. And best to get someone with experience in Amazon SEO and translation. And then you also will need to offer Japanese language customer support. If anyone sends you a question, you are expected to reply them in Japanese. So there's ways to do this. I hired a part-time Japanese VA previously to help me with those translations. And now, with ChatGPT actually does an excellent job of translating into Japanese. I actually tested it with my former Japanese VA. He was like blown away. So he said, wow, that response was perfect. So ChatGPT could be an option in a pinch if you're just starting out. But I recommend getting a Japanese VA to, I mean, to handle the customer service and translations to hire a professional, like a native speaker Japanese. Okay. All right. After that, step number 6 is localization. So beyond translation, you want to make sure your listings are tailored to the Japanese market and culture. So that includes everything from product descriptions, also to images. Make sure, it's tailored to Japanese market culture. Japanese tend to be more detail oriented. So, they really pay attention to certain details in the listings. This is especially true if you're selling a product at a higher price point. We find that 5,000 yen, that's the threshold. Where below that, people tend to make more impulse buys. They don't pay as much attention. But if you're north of 5,000 yen, which is about, let's say, 35 to 40 US dollars, then people pay closer scrutiny to all of the details. And then if you're selling anything in beauty, obviously the standards of beauty in Asia are very different than the West. So
Yeah.
if you're like a Maybelline, you want to kind of change the models to fit more of the Asian, beauty, standard, like they like fair skin rather than tan skin, et cetera, right? So, depending on your product, definitely get it localized, right? Okay. And then that brings us to our 7th step is to get ready to sell on Amazon co.jp. I find that, once you completed these steps, you're ready to start selling. It's cheaper than developing like an entirely new product for your existing marketplace, right? So, I mean, you can, take a portion of your order, from your factory and ship it to Japan once you complete these steps to do a test. And then one final important step here is, again, you can transfer your Amazon global reviews into Japan. So that way you have a head start, right? From day one, you have more social proof. If you have 500 reviews in the US, start that with day one with 0 sales history, right? So you can build more trust and then even lower your PPC marketing cost. So in a nutshell, that's the 7 steps to get started in selling in Japan.
In terms of profitability, if you talked about these $35 products, let's just use a $25 product as a for instance. A lot of people are selling at that price point. Do you price it competitively in Japan, where it's the same $25 equivalent in Japan, or do you have to? Is it similar to how it was when I was doing the UK stuff, where you have to kind of mark it up a little bit to compensate for the additional cost of importing there and the taxes? Or do you sell it for less because now you have, maybe it's cheaper to ship from China into Japan and there's less PPC costs? I'm just kind of curious in terms of where pricing ends up being. Are margins about the same? Are they better? Are they worse? What have you seen there?
Yeah, I would calculate it based on your landed cost. I would assume the landed cost would be less than landing it in the US because of the cheaper and faster shipping and there's no tariffs, right? So, and also take a look at your PPC. And I'm pretty confident your PPC costs are going to be lower. So you could price it more competitively. For my personal products, I always try to price it more on the premium price point. I don't want to get into the price war with the really cheapo sellers. I mean, that's a race to the bottom, right? So I try to, I want to look at the reviews and, obviously make a premium product that I can sell at a higher price point for more margin. So even if I'm moving fewer number of units, I'm still making more profit per unit. So it makes sense for me. So, for me personally, I don't try to have the cheapest product. I may, in the beginning, I'll price it more competitively, but I'll try to gradually tick it up, once we get, better ranking and we go up from there.
Okay. Interesting. Cool. So people are intrigued and they happen to be available in a couple of weeks. We're unfortunately dropping this episode very close to when you're doing your summit, but you're doing a seven-figure seller summit Japan, which I wish I could come to. We were talking before recording here. I've been to 57 countries, and Japan is by far my favorite. I absolutely love Japan. I would have loved to have spent some more time there, but I've had some personal stuff going on this year. Just a really crappy start to the year. I just released a podcast about it, so people are probably pretty aware of that. But something I'm not going to be able to physically attend this year. I've done your virtual ones a couple of times, but yeah, I mean, if people are intrigued and interested, and they want to take a quick last minute trip to Japan, maybe let's just spend the last few minutes talking about the summit you're putting together over there.
Yeah. So, I mean, we talked about like a lot of these opportunities in Japan, and at the same time, there's challenges, right? So, like, with importer of records, with, compliance testing, with, localization, etc. Um, I, I really wanted to create a physical event where if a seller wanted to sell in Japan, they can get like a turnkey solution. So I'm very excited. This will be the first ever Amazon seller conference in Japan, like ever. There has
Is that
never been
right?
one, even in Japanese. Yes,
Wow,
this is the first
surprising.
one ever. And this will
Hmm.
be April 4th to the 5th, 2023 in Tokyo. It's a 2-day in-person event. And we're going to cover everything from A to Z, how to sell into Amazon Japan, even if you don't speak any Japanese. This is for you if you're like a 7-figure seller already selling in US or EU. We'll share the complete playbook, starting from, launch strategies to, keyword research, to product selection, to compliance testing. We're going to have, several importer of records in the room. So if you have any questions about, what's the duty rate, is there any compliance tests I need to do? You just talk to that guy over there, or you just talk to that lady over there. You'll get all of your questions answered, right? And, compliance testing, we're also going to have, I'm looking to get an accountant as well. So, any like that threshold for your product, do I need to register for CT, or can I hold off? Rather than like scouring the internet and YouTube videos. I mean, there isn't that much information as far as I've checked on Amazon Japan. So we've brought like, sellers, like 7-figure sellers, like Nick Katz. He's been selling many years. Bernie Thompson, he's an 8-figure seller. He's been selling worldwide on Amazon. He's been selling for 10 years in Japan. He's going to share his strategies. So really, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you'll learn A to Z how to sell into Japan. Um, at the event. And then also the timing is the best time of year to visit
Yeah.
Japan. We talked a little bit about this. It's the middle of cherry blossom season.
Yep.
So we're also going to have a unique Japan experience. We're going to have like a cherry blossom night out in a Tokyo park underneath the cherry blossom trees. We'll lay down some spreads with some Japanese like sake, sushi, good food, good company, network with other sellers, the speakers. Everybody's going to be there. So this is going to be a unique experience, like not just for a business, but also culturally. We're also going to do some fun events as well after the event. We're going to do like go karting like on the streets of
Cool.
Tokyo, dressed up as like
Nice.
Super Mario Kart, and
Awesome.
some stuff like that as well. So I guarantee you guys will get a ton of value and you have a lot of fun if you can make it to Tokyo.
It sounds like a great way to have a business trip right off and go have a lot of fun and learn about selling on Amazon Japan. I have the
Yeah,
URL here. It's a mouthful. So if you're out there listening, we'll also put a link in the show notes if you happen to be driving. But it's 7-figure seller japanmastermind.com, and it's the number 7. So 7-figure seller japanmastermind.com. You can find out everything about the summit over there. Again, April 4th and 5th. I've looked through the speaker lineup. You already kind of mentioned several people, but it's kind of the who's who of the e-commerce speaking circuit. There's some really great people here. You didn't mention a good friend of mine, Jeff Cohen, who has actually moved to go work for Amazon. I think just seeing
yeah,
him from that perspective will
yeah,
be freaking awesome. He's just a great
yeah.
speaker, and he can be talking about ballet shoes or something that I have no interest in, and I would still sit there and watch him talk. I just find it to be very fascinating. And I also saw that
Yeah.
Bradley from Helium 10's coming as well. Another just awesome dude, like and just really good speaker. So
Yeah, I completely forgot to mention, Mike, Amazon is coming to speak at the event. So Jeff Cohen from
yeah,
Amazon is coming to speak. So, I mean, not that this is not a legit event, but I mean, Amazon is participating to share with you guys. And, we'll also have an opportunity there's a contest for like an audit by Jeff Cohen, over the shoulder look view of your account. And we'll have people from Amazon Japan attending the event as well. So I think in terms of building some connections, possibly with some managers, that would be valuable. And, yes, you're right. Bradley's son, he's coming as well. But at the same time, I think the unique thing about the event is like most of these other speakers, they've never presented like anywhere. So these are like new faces. We have an expert on, importing into Japan. We have experts on Japanese localization, right? And that's all they do. That's their jam, right? And they like, there's companies like Importer of Records. They, like nobody's ever heard of them, right? So I think, it's kind of like you guys will be the first movers, the pioneers to come into Japan. So I wanted to set up a coupon code for Ecom Crew. So if you use the coupon code Ecom Crew, you get $300 off the ticket.
Sweet.
Here. So yeah, hopefully you can join at 7-figure seller japanmastermind.com.
Awesome. So 7-figure seller japanmastermind.com. That is a mouthful. Use the code Ecom Crew, get $300 off, which is awesome. Thank you for offering that to our audience. Again, I know it's short notice. I apologize already to Gary through email, but I'll apologize here publicly. We were supposed to record this a few weeks ago, and just because of all of the personal stuff I had going on, we just couldn't get it done until now. Plus, there were some conferences going on here that I was physically at on top of everything. So it just made everything compressed. And so I wish I could physically be there, number one. But I definitely advocate if I had the time, was able to, I would definitely go do it. Again, Gary's one of the good guys in the industry. I've known him for a long time. His online events have been awesome. And if you have an opportunity to go to Japan, if you've never been there, first of all, you will love it. I can almost guarantee you. Again, of all the places I've been to, my favorite by far. We were even talking about moving there while we were there, just because we loved it so much. But we've already done that before and moved internationally a couple of times, and I think we're done with that. But I would love to go spend some significant time in Japan, and hopefully next year around this event will be that time. So best of luck with the event, Gary. Again, guys, don't forget to go use that coupon code $300 off. It's an awesome deal. I think it'll be well worth it, and at the least, it's a good business write off. So. You get to go ride some go-karts in the streets of Tokyo, have some sushi, go check out the cherry blossoms, and have a great time.
Yeah, every time you raise your glass and say kanpai, you'll be able to write that off as well.
Very good. Very good. All right, Gary, be good, my friend. Good talking to you. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's great to be here, and good luck, everybody.